made it to the introductory teachers meeting we had held in March. So as I figured out, we haven't met. And then the thought occurred to me that I also should give a little bit of my background to new people. So with that, we will start and then go into the lesson. And I was born in Sri Lanka and lived most of my life in Sri Lanka. My parents never speak any English. They don't even know how to say hello. So everything I learned from school and in university. So I became a monk when I was 16 because I was angry with my father, as any 16-year-old is in that age. One day I left home saying that I don't need his support and will never return. He said, do it, but he didn't really mean it. So my friends knew that I had two options, either to run and find a job in Colombo or to become a monk. They pushed me into the second choice, to becoming a monk. I thought I had that intention in my mind. I was dealing with pressure of studying, which I never gave up though. I mean, I was taking biology, chemistry, physics classes. But 3-4 months into that, I was like, what is the purpose of doing all this? What is my goal in this life? So I had a different calling in life. And when I was taken to the monastery, I liked it. And in a short time, I was able to, because at home, my father was very strict. We did chantings for 1 hour daily. We had to do that. So there was not much I had to learn as a novice when I went to the monastery. So I was already qualified ahead of others. And I was ordained, then told to study Pali, not biology, physics or anything. That's how I knew that now my only choice was to, if I were to study, I should study Pali, Buddhist studies and Sinhalese language and literature. But learning Sinhalese language and literature with Pali, so these are two languages, and then the syllabus recommended Buddhist civilization, about the things that you are learning in your other course, like 6 teachers in India and the Buddha come into prominence. And so monks usually learn those. And that was for advanced level studies, so I was never put to any monastic, primary monastic school called Pirivana, where monks are put into that kind of a school for their learning. So my Pali was 0 when I started. Not like those monks who went through the regular system and started their advanced level with that background. But I was starting my advanced level studies with those monks. But I met this teacher, he believed in me, he's a monk. He said, don't worry about what others are saying, you can catch up. And this was his first time teaching for high school monastics too. But he thought I had the potential. So I'm forever grateful to him and still in touch with him. And I want him to visit this place one day. He encouraged me and always stood behind my studies. And most of my studies were self-studies. I did the work assigned for the day, little procrastination. That's postponing things here, but still managed to get things done. Working midnight and waking up early in the morning, sleeping under benches in the temple, forgetting the bed for those. I had to really invest my time and energy into that. So I didn't know what these, and I studied in Sinhalese, not in English. So up to those 2 years, these books I were not there even to learn what books are. Just there was a struggle for me. Like no, only the syllabus. So, but fortunately, as I sat for term tests, for some reasons, my school education, I'm humbled to say that I was competent and working hard also in the school. Therefore, I was the top student among all those monks. I was surprised with that. I started further believing in me. There were 60 monks in the class and I had the highest score. Second year, the term test, same thing. Third year, third term test in every year, I had the highest accumulated marks. So sat for the government exam and became from the art stream. I was the 29th student from art stream from the district, from all the aggregate marks, and so I went to the University of Peradeniya. Well, I first went to University of Kelaniya thinking that the professors there were more famous and familiar, but turns out they don't offer their courses in English medium. I did not have any English background though. Never studied in English, but I had the interest for it. I thought this was the only way for me to learn two languages, more into Pali, with the intention of teaching Pali and teaching Buddhism in English in the future. I didn't know, I just envisioned this. So that's how I began. And because Kelaniya University did not offer courses in English medium, after studying there my first year, I requested for transfer to University of Peradeniya because I had enough marks. They granted my permission, and from second year onwards I studied Pali in English medium and started learning this. But before going there, I remember this Pali professor. He lived near my temple in where I stayed at that time. He was very, very kind to teach me how to study Pali from this book. He told me to collect monks who are interested in learning Pali in English. And unfortunately, he's losing his memory now. He's a little bit old. And I never forget the lessons he taught. We only did about 3-4 sessions, but his approach, the way he taught, was very, very helpful to me. And that was my first introduction. His name is Professor Sumanapala Galmangwada. If you have heard of him, he comes to Mandala TV programs and he's popular. A great Abhidhammic scholar as well. His English is superb. But he told me, okay, if you have to study in English medium, you have to go to that other university and they will provide the curriculum in English. So I started there. No English background. As I was listening to teachers, I realized they are all using the same set of words and blending it here and there and making sentences and speaking. So, and I slowly started really memorizing things for exam, and because I didn't know how to write in an exam. So I managed to get a first class honors at the end. And then went to Italy for my studies. I studied cognitive psychology a little bit. Don't ask me any questions about cognitive psychology. I forgot all of that. And then after that, I went to Sri Lanka and taught in University of Peradeniya and Sri Lanka International Buddhist Academy. These are both, they offer undergraduate programs for students. I taught Pali in both places. I also taught in Asgiriya Pirivena, which is the biggest monastic training institute in Sri Lanka. It's located in Kandy near the Tooth Relic Temple. And then I was invited to come to Missouri, to Dhammasukha Meditation Center. So it's in Farmington Hills, Ozark Mountains. It's 108-acre forest monastery. Bhante Vimalaransi is the abbot there. So he invited me and he asked me to help him with his teachings. We traveled to Sri Lanka together, we traveled to Indonesia and did retreats. And in my second visit in 2014, I was accepted at Harvard School of Divinity as a student, a specialist student. I never thought I will do their full degree, but at the end of that first year, I was accepted to the full degree. So I spent 3 years studying at Harvard University. So I became a chaplain there because I was interested in doing field work, visiting patients in hospitals, and then that I continued upon my graduation for the 4th year. And when my term ended, I was invited to come to Michigan to be among the staff monks in the Buddhist monastery called Great Lakes Buddhist Vihara in Michigan. So I'm there now. I can't leave the monastery more than 6 days because during these 3 months, monks spend this retreat called Rains Retreat. They abstain from traveling any longer than 6 nights. The 7th night you spend at the same monastery where you promised to the Buddha that you will stay. Although I had the invitation to live here and do the teachings, but I had to, maybe I will do it another time when I'm free from places. We'll see. But that is my background. I live in Detroit, Michigan. So the flight is about an hour and a half. He came to pick me up. Hoan, right? He came to pick me up yesterday. So that's how I got here. When Venerable Bhante Sila Ratana, living in West Virginia, and Bhavana Society put me in contact with Venerable Kong Yan for teaching. So I'm grateful that this happened. So I haven't really, I do teachings, I do sutra teachings, but this is in about 3 years I'm starting to teach direct Pali course again. But thank you for putting me back in my track, back in Pali track. Okay, so we are back in the lesson, the Tipitaka. So Tipitaka is the 3 baskets. Ti means 3, Pitaka means baskets. When the Buddha passed away, he said his teachings and discipline will be the master after him. He never appointed a successor. There were very many senior monks, but none of them were appointed as the successor. He said, my teachings and my disciplinary code will be the teacher. So no Dalai Lama ever can say that I am the leader of Buddhism. No Pope in Buddhism because of that statement. But there are leaders like Thich Nhat Hanh. There are different monks, Sri Lankan, Bhikkhu Bodhi, different monks, Venerable Bhante Gunaratana. All these monks are leaders, but not the sole advisor to all the monks. But in different countries, you have sects, different schools of monasticism. These are called sections and sects, and they have leaders in all these sections. And so these monks never want to change anything the Buddha taught. So even then, at that time when the Buddha passed away, 3 months into it, the monks wanted to collect all the teachings that the Buddha taught, and they wanted to preserve it for future generations. But at that time, there was no any strong writing tradition established. There were writings on gold plates and stuff like that, but not strongly established writing tradition. I'm getting into that history a little bit here. So that's the story. About 3 months after the Buddha's passing away, they started gathering all the teachings, That incident, that event is called the first Buddhist Council. Enlightened monks coming together, 500 monks came together and appointed Venerable Ananda, who had the greatest memory. He remembered everything the Buddha taught, and they asked questions from him and he answered. There was Venerable Upali. Upali answered questions about Vinaya, the disciplines, and the monks then agreed upon Dhamma and Vinaya, Sutras and Vinaya, and they decided that we will not change anything, we will preserve it for future generations. How do you preserve it then? They are assigned different groups of monks. Okay, we will assign you this branch. Your duty is to teach this to your students and continue this and make this your practice as well. Utilize it for your practice. And they assigned Vinaya for another group and Abhidhamma for another group. Like even in those three baskets you find different divisions. I will tell that to you, in the next few minutes, what divisions we find. It's good to have that understanding before you know where you are headed with this language study. So the whole body of Buddha's teachings transmitted orally. It's oral tradition. Monks chanted, recited them daily. This is how monks wanted to preserve it. Oral tradition, like here in the morning you do the chanting, and when you do it 3-4 days you remember what you chant, and you can keep the book aside. You don't have to really look at it because you have it in your mind. That way you teach it to the next group, so you make a school, right? And at that time in India, transmission from oral transmission was the accepted mode of propagating knowledge. For they believed that is the one that you have remembered has the highest power, not the one that you have read. Okay. The term sutra. Sutra means Sruta, not sutra here. Sruta. That's the word. Sruta means the person who has heard. You find the Pali word Bahusutta. Here is the Sinhala word and Sanskrit word Bahusruta on the screen. One who heard from many are then simply referred to learned or well-educated persons. So to have heard and remembered so much made a person a scholar. Later on they accepted writing as a mode of transmission. The first writing of the teachings of the Buddha happened in Sri Lanka in the 1st century BC. This is why Buddhists around the world show so much respect to Sri Lanka even to date for writing it down and preserving it. And there is a story behind that. So the writing took place in Alu Vihara. Aloka Vihara is Aloka means light. That's a Pali word. In Sri Lanka, you still have that temple in Candian site, in the mountain sites in Sri Lanka. And I'm not sure about this year, the 29 BCE. Please verify that with other sources. What I usually teach people is that it took place in 1st century. 1st century in according to the not BC, 2nd century, 1st century. This is the way I think the Roman calendar works. I'm not totally sure, but 1st century is what I tell people. Don't want to give the wrong information. All right, I mentioned to you about councils. See, this is what happened. 3 councils were held. The 4th one is the one that is about writing down the canon. The first one is 3 months after passing away of the Buddha. 500 Arahant monks, enlightened monks, attended. They purified, collected, and assigned each group to continue the teachings. Number 2 happened 100 years after passing away of the Buddha. 700 monks attended. They were all enlightened monks. And council number 3 was in 268 BC during the King Emperor Ashoka's time in India. There is 1,000 monks in attendance. Big stories around this. These are all recorded in the literature. When you do your own readings, you will find stories behind this. Especially after that 3rd council, King Ashoka sent his son to Sri Lanka, and later his daughter also was sent. And these 2 are prominent monks who established Buddhism in Sri Lanka. So the place where they landed from air, they had the psychic abilities. These places still exist. That's why people do love to visit these places in Sri Lanka. When they visit, it's mostly a Buddhist pilgrimage for you when you visit Sri Lanka. Yeah?
You should look on the map, but where is Sri Lanka?
This is in Anuradhapura. You have heard? I think it's what province is that?
Is it in India?
Huh? Oh, where Sri Lanka is? It's below India.
Below India.
It's an island below India.
Island.
Completely separate from India. So different government system. It's a republic. So I thought you asked where exactly in Sri Lanka this incident took place. So. And Council 4 is when it took place in the 1st century, and then they decided to write the canon down, things they memorized, into writing. Now, you see, I mentioned to you that Arahant monks, enlightened monks, were picked for these councils. So those non-enlightened monks didn't like that. They, do you want me to go there? They wanted to say enlightenment is not complete. They wanted to challenge those monks. They said everyone can become Buddhas. So they were majority, not everyone was in. So there was big groups, and they started building their own branches to not take all the teachings strictly, because these monks, decided not to change anything. But those majority monks decided to change things as the social needs came. So rules were flexible in that. So monks started also getting divided, and some strictly adhering to these teachings, and some leaving, taking these little bit light and loose and following as they wished. So different schools started. In this you will learn in the other course, but if you have questions, please do ask. This is the incident. you see this monk sleeping? This is not a Sri Lankan monk, but this is the image I have in my mind when I tell this story to you. In Sri Lanka, before the first writing of the Tripitaka took place, there was a famine. Famine, right? Famine. So for 12 years, there was no rain, no food, just like a recession here, right? Great recession. And many monks had no food. Many stories emerged. They are also written down in some Pali texts, later texts, not canonical texts. And many monks, because they didn't have any food, they decided to flee to India, the neighboring country. Only few monks were left, about 12 monks, the entire island. And they were starving, but they did not want to abandon their practice of memorizing the teachings. They continued. They made a pile of sands and came together, stick their head in the sand to keep, I think, in the beach, to keep them moisturized, and started even while starving, started reciting these and teaching, so that they continue their practice. The monks who fled to India also did the same. They knew that it was their responsibility to keep the teachings alive. That's why monks are so much respected in Sri Lanka and elsewhere too, for keeping the teachings alive. So the image you saw is like that. Monks starving but sleeping in the sand and trying to do their duty to preserve the teachings. Many monks passed away, but those monks returned from India, compared what they remembered with what these monks remembered. They were same, nothing has changed, and decided to request the king to make arrangements to write the Tripitaka down, write the teachings down on palm leaves manuscripts. So one of the chronicles in Sri Lanka, Mahavansa, testifies that this historic moment relates to the period of King Vattagamini. This is a king in Sri Lanka, his second enthronement. So palm leaves were used to record the teachings. These are long, narrow leaves which were sewn at the edges, then grouped into bunches and stored in baskets. Thus, Tipitaka literally means tree baskets, as it was divided into 3 divisions or categories. You saw that image. And this is that temple. It's still there in Kandy. These are dried palm leaves. This is a monk writing on palm leaves. So, after writing, what he does is that he has to apply this black powder-like thing, the paste, so the letters will emerge with that. You see the letters now? So this is a place where they do that. They show how they do it in that temple even now. There are monk experts who are showing visitors the way they inscribe the letters. And you see that this writing he did has no gaps. Right? This is a written text in Thai, a palm leaf manuscript written in Thai. You see also the drawings. So these became like some jewels that people preserved. When tsunami came in coastal sites in Sri Lanka, many of these were destroyed, but others survived because they have only copies in different places. And even when we monks visit some of my friend monks' places, the libraries of those temples are locked about 7 times before you enter to those places. Not even monks are allowed to go in there because these has highest value. Now you have electronic copies of these. It's a different world, but the wood they use to make the cupboards are the most expensive ones. The locks are like really like the locks in the royal palace, and 2 monks have keys. You have to get permission from 2 monks to use the library. So that's how precious these were preserved. There was a time that monks were threatened by certain kings, were told to disrobe, like quit being monks, at which point they decided to put on white robes and still preserve the teachings. They were called Ganinatse in Sri Lanka. So, Tipitaka, you see a cupboard here. This is like an open cupboard that you find now in Sri Lanka. Mostly these are like locked. Not even monks are interested in opening them, except when you are a teaching monk, then you would open and teach something from it. Times have changed. Monks study different stuff like political science, because the monks want to study and help their families, so different motivations. Anyway, Vinaya Pitaka refers to the rules taught by the Buddha. Sutta Pitaka are the teachings given by the Buddha. Abhidhamma Pitaka is doctrine reworked and reorganized into an investigation of mind and matter. More philosophy. Some people are interested in analyzing things, so they have a strong interest in learning. Some people's mind are analytical. Some people really get bored studying those divisions, like 52 of this, 7 of that, 102 of this. That's what you find in Abhidhamma. Try to say this for me. Vinaya Pitaka,
Vinaya Pitaka,
Sutta Pitaka,
Sutta Pitaka,
Abhidhamma Pitaka.
Abhidhamma Pitaka.
See, Abhidhamma.
Abhidhamma.
Okay, not Dhamma. It's Abhidhamma.
Abhidhamma.
Very good, very good. Thank you. So under Vinaya you have 5 books, mostly concerned with rules for monks. And there are stories about each rule, why monks had to be punished and give, promulgate a rule so monks will keep it. Buddha didn't do it for 20 years. Monks were behaving nicely, but there were misguided people joining the order with different intentions, and incidents were happening, and slowly the Buddha started teaching them rules and telling them, this is what you are supposed to do, this is something you should abstain from, things like that. How to behave with your bowl, how to put on your robes, what's prescribed, what belongings can you have, if you can have an iPhone with you when you sleep, things like that. So these are the 5 books. I haven't put the Pali marks, how you pronounce. These marks are called diacritical marks. Like, as I told you, like Tipitaka, there is a dot under that T. These are diacritical marks. Marks that you use in any language to distinguish a letter from another letter. So you have a special sound emphasis added to certain. I will teach that to you with the alphabet teaching. Just briefly, try to read these names with me to become familiarized with the Vinaya. Parachika Pali.
Parachika Pali.
Pachitya Pali.
Pachitya Pali.
Mahavagga Pali.
Mahavagga
Chulavagga Pali.
Chulavagga Pali.
Parivara Pali.
Parivara Pali.
Okay. Parachika means major offenses of monks. Pachitya is minor offenses. Mahavagga mostly about stories, Buddha's awakening, his sermons, a little bit of literature. Greater section that is called Mahavagga, and Chulavagga is lesser section. Chula means small, more rules and procedures for institutional acts or functions for monks, building monasteries, building boundaries, things like that. Parivara Pali is mostly about additions to Vinaya, additions to monks' monastic discipline. It has summaries and explanation of the rules for instructional purpose. Don't worry, I will share these slides with you. We have about 6 more slides to go. Are you done with this slide? Who is still working on it? Good. These days now you have cell phones, you snap it and never look at it afterwards.
You will send us the file?
Yeah. We'll send it as soon as I get a moment to send it. Before, maybe during lunch break. So Sutta Pitaka has also 5 collections, and these collections under Sutta Pitaka are called Nikayas. Can you tell that? Nikayas. Nikayas. These are groups, and I'll tell you a little later. There are some teachings added by disciples, students of the disciples, some prominent disciples of the Buddha. These monks had many students, so their teachings, their famous teachings, were also added to the canon. So you will find them also among the Buddha's teachings. Later, the Buddha proved these teachings. Say, okay, if I told that, I will teach the same way, just to approve the brilliant teaching given by these monks. Most of these teachings were intended for monks, but also for lay people. So sutras are for ordinary folks, simple ideas. You see the division here. Yes. On the first one is Digha Nikaya. Can you tell that? Digha Nikaya. Collection of long discourses. In that you find 34 sutras, some very lengthy ones. Digha means long. A vivid picture of the different aspects of life and thoughts at the Buddha's time. So a lot of complex teachings about different teachings that were there at the contemporary teachers and how the Buddha presented his opinion among those teachers. If you want to find that, you go to long discourses. But there are even longer ones mixed up in other Nikayas, like Madhyama Nikaya. Can you tell that? Madhyama Nikaya. So these are middle-length sayings, middle-length discourses of the Buddha. Has about 152 sutras divided into 3 collections. But when you find Bhikkhu Bodhi's translation of middle-length sayings, he has all that packed into one book, very nicely organized. And also repetitions have been removed. So people nowadays don't like repetitions very much, but those days, to emphasize the same teaching again and again, and monks were not that busy. They had all that time to sit through nights and listen to the teachings until the Buddha finished. Monks were so inspired, didn't want to leave, and right after the teaching, they didn't go to sleep. They went into practice. That's how you feel when you listen to some inspiring teachings from some monks. Like, you will not talk to anybody, but go find a place and start to be in that same mode. So you find very inspiring teachings in middle-length collections. It has different similes, very profound similes taught by the Buddha and different monks. And next one is Samyutta Nikaya. I will tell that again. Samyutta Nikaya. So collection of kindred discourses, like small teachings. Very like 3-4 lines here and there. Monks, there are 3 teachings that are prominent, like impermanence, suffering, and non-self. That's it. And that was enough for that 5 months. They went to the forest and started meditating. And then different monks coming in. There are 5 aggregates. That was it. Those monks were happy and they went into contemplate on that. Just a reminder teachings. In that you find 2,941 sutras grouped into 5 parts. These parts are called Vaggas. Vagga means groups. Vaggas. The next part is called, listen carefully, Anguttara Nikaya. Let's try that again. Anguttara Nikaya. You see that? Yeah. Anguttara Nikaya. Ang. Okay? Good. Very good. Collection of the gradual sayings. What is Anguttara? If you really have learned the language, you can break it into 2. Anga, Uttara. Anga is components. Uttara means, increasing. So, division of 1s, division of 2s, division of 3s, you see increasing. Division of 4s, division of 5s, division of 6. So, different components increasing as you open each section. That is why these are called Anguttara. Or numerical sayings. Numerical. That's how Bhikkhu Bodhi translated it. And you have 2,308 small sutras arranged according to the number of topics discussed from 1 to 11. Have you learned this before? Or is this your first time learning this? First time? I think monastics have gone through this again, because you have to teach to that. But it's good to be reminded of this. And the last one, although it's called Khuddaka Nikaya. Khuddaka Nikaya. Collection of small texts. Khuddaka text, small texts. Although this is small, but has the biggest number of books. Teachings that did not fall into those previous ones were grouped in here. And you will find the oldest teachings of the Buddha in there. For example, Sutta Nipata. In this collection you find 15 books. 15 small books. Sutta Nipata is one of those books. In it you find the Metta Sutta, famous Metta Sutta, a very old teaching of the Buddha. When you look at the language there, it's very old teaching of the Buddha. Okay. So it's subdivided into 15 books, which includes the Dhammapada. Dhammapada is also called the Handbook of Buddhists. Has 236 verses, I think. That you can chant every day and use, and each verse has a story behind it, and you have the illustrated version of that online. If you find one and read one, that will be very helpful daily, for your daily practice. You don't have to do it now, but keep that. Yes.
When you pronounce it, I hear, for example, Anguttara, like TH, the. Is it TH, the or TA, the?
In Pali, for tha, you put THA. For the, you put TTA.
Emphasize the like Thai.
If you emphasize t as Thai, you put a dot under.
Okay. So in here, what is the pronunciation?
Anguttara. Alright, for this is a confusion that gets many Sri Lankans. Okay? Because when you write Vijita, you write THA.
TH, yes.
But the Pali style, when you have learned Pali, you cut that H. Why that happens is the way Pali is written.
I see.
So when you write it, if you really want to get that uttara, you would add the H sound without knowing any Pali background. But now, because you are learning Pali, because you will get to know this with the alphabet training, so keep that question also for that. So, okay. Anyway, let's move on. 3 more slides to go. Abhidhamma. Okay, next. Abhidhamma is profound teachings. It comprises ultimate realities in 7 works. And these are also found in other schools of Buddhism. These are the 7 books. Let's try to say this. Dhamma Sangani,
Dhamma Sangani,